Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais revenir à ce que mon collègue de Seychelles a abordé. Ce que je voudrais dire que la préservation des sites culturels demande beaucoup de moyens, d'argent, mais surtout les moyens techniques. Avec le temps, ces moyens techniques sont difficiles à trouver. Et je crois là, il faut faire et déployer beaucoup d'efforts pour aider les pays à préserver et restaurer leurs sites culturels. Merci.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to call on the Minister for Tourism for Vietnam, if they are here, just to talk on this topic about how sort of tourism works for protection, or in the case of Morocco, does not when you have the softer tourism spots being commercialised. So, if the Minister of Vietnam, the Tourism Minister of Vietnam, is here. Not here? I'm sorry, I can't see. Is the Minister...
First of all, we'd like to appreciate the Royal Government of Cambodia to cooperate with UNWTO and Unesco. Secondly, we would like to inform Excellency Minister and Head of Delegations that Vietnam has 21 UNESCO recognized heritage. And we follow very strictly the recommendations of UNESCO in protecting this heritage. And in the government, we have the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism in Vietnam that is responsible for the state management on culture, sports and tourism, and that's why we can connect the tourism and culture activities. And on these occasions, we also would like to thank CNN for your kind cooperation in promoting Vietnam image in the world. And we also would like to take this opportunity to thank Excellency Mr. Taleb Rifai for your kind cooperation in organizing the International Spiritual Tourism Conference in Vietnam. And our 5 countries in the regions cooperate with each other to promote the 5 countries, 1 destination scheme, including Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. And we have very specific action program, and we do very well in promoting this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call on the Vice Minister of Tourism and Hotels for Myanmar, please, which obviously is a fascinating topic at the moment. So recently opened up, so much heritage, so much culture, so big a need, so big a demand for change amongst the people. How is Myanmar planning to protect its cultural heritage, its culture from a lot of people who want to get in there and a lot of people who want to make money very quickly?
Yes, thank you to moderator. I am from the Myanmar, Deputy Minister of Hotel and Tourism. Your question is to be related to the Ministry of Culture, but I have the good knowledge, so that I share it. We have the rich culture, that is, we have to advertising in all the websites and all the journals. That we have the last year we have to get the freshly of heritage tree area. That is the ethnic people of our Pew. That is very relative to our Mon state and also in Cambodia like a feature. So that the first one of the heritage is at the Bago division. That Bago division means the Pie Township. at that of the UNCN heritage area. And second one is we have to see the Magui division, that is the upper Myanmar. That also the Big Canoe, we have to get the heritage. And also on the upper Myanmar, near at the Mandalay division, we have the Hanlim village of that we have the ethnic. So that in our heritage area, we also doing with the protective area, and second, monument area, and the third one is the architecture area. That is supported by the UNESCO, so that we have to try for this area and put up the heritage logo is already. Now, we have the rules and regulations on that heritage area for the sustainable tourism, sustainable culture is very important.
Can I ask you a question on that point? You say you have the rules and regulations for sustainable, and I'm sure if I asked everybody here, there would be rules and regulations for sustainable development. My question, sir, first of all, you have rules, but can you implement those rules? Can you enforce those rules? You can?
We have already improved with the UNESCO. Okay, thank you.
So, just as a follow-up question, what do you need from the international community as the newest emerging country really in the world to help you protect your culture, your heritage? What do you need?
Yes. We have the responsible tourism policy is already established, so that we have also the community-based involvement tourism is also established. So that in that area, rules and regulation does not be built with a high level of order and only staying with the villages and villagers. They will be promoted in this area and to do it business for own traditional work.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Perez, I'd like to ask you that question relating to Myanmar. What do you see and what should be UNESCO's role in helping Myanmar develop sustainably its tourism industry?
No, I don't think. Hear me?
Yes. I can.
Yes. I think UNESCO in this particular field, we have two main tools. One is national capacity building programs, which provides technical assistance to countries, to member states, to build up their own capacities and to train their own people. This is one very important issue, not only for this particular problem, to address this problem, but also to address in general heritage, cultural heritage protection and promotion. And the other program we built up is international technical assistance, which can even be funded by addressing to international funds existing in UNESCO, particularly in the World Heritage Committee. We have to recognize that our financial situation is not very good right now, and we have less resources in both programs that we should like to have. But nevertheless, they exist. And I think there is a more general question beyond these particular programs of national capacity building, and it goes also to building national capacity building for intangible heritage, not just for protecting material heritage or built heritage, and in the technical international assistance or funded by the international community. I think there is also a shared responsibility between the member states and the organization, and in this case we have to also to address United Nations system, because there are programs which can be also helping us in other agencies of the United Nations, such as, for instance, on our sister agency, World Tourist Organization. I think the main problem is that the shared responsibility between the international community and the member states should be recognized both levels. It's not just because member states address the international community that they haven't met their responsibilities. They have to meet their responsibilities at first instance. Each country has a duty towards itself and towards the others. And I think it is something very important. The protection of heritage, according with the international conventions, is for everybody, for each country and for the international community. The international community can help quite a lot recognizing the importance of the sites, but we cannot substitute or replace the commitment of member states and of people and communities owning these sites. So this is very important. So we can maybe come back to this afterwards, because there are many questions related to this, but I wanted to make this statement. In conclusion, we have some instruments, but we cannot rely only upon our instruments. This is a shared responsibility.
Thank you very much. Shared responsibility. If the Deputy Minister for Culture of Armenia is here, sir, question for you. How do you effectively promote culture on both the intangible and the tangibles? Is it a fairly sort of homogeneous process, or is it quite difficult to actually promote both of them at the same time?
Thank you. Well, promotion is usually done with the ministry, together with the Ministry of Economy, because Ministry of Culture is responsible mostly for protecting this heritage. But in terms of the rights collaboration, if the question is about how to do it more efficiently, I guess well, one of my colleagues from Seychelles was comparing it with marriage, tourism and culture, right? The interesting is that during the lunch, I was comparing it the same way, and I was telling that it seems like we are on a marriage now, on a ceremony, and it's the marriage of culture and tourism. But here we have a very important point.
Can I just quickly, a marriage of equals?
That this marriage, the relations must be equal. You know, because when the relation is not equal and one of the it's, then usually these relations come to the end and the divorce. Need to find the right collaboration with equal relations. That's the first point with all the parties, with all the state parties that are working in this field. The second point for promotion is for more efficient work in this field, I guess, is the involvement of private sector in this work. I mean, whenever you have a project where the private sector is investing, usually the motivation to check the efficiency of the amount spent on the preservation is the motivation for the private sector is, I guess, a little bit higher than the state motivation is. So it's usually all the projects wherever, well, in my experience, wherever I saw the private investment were quite efficient. I can give you some examples for the Armenian case. Well, the monuments, of course, the quantity of monuments are much bigger than the possibility to recover or keep them in the same way that they are. And well, only in the state list we have 24,000 monuments. We have the list of monuments preserved by the state, and we have about 24,000 there. And just a few examples of much efficient projects that we did. One of them was in the southern part of Armenia. We have a monastery of medieval ages, and next to it is a village. And going to this monastery, people needed to go by car 40 minutes, and it was very hard way. A private investor from diaspora invested $22 million to make an air way, a cable way, let's say, which is the longest one in the world now. It has 5,752 meters length, and the amount of the quantity of the tourists became much, of course, more than it was before. And the amount was invested by the private sector from diaspora, from the Armenian diaspora. Of course, the government helped. Of course, the government invested also. But this project works very well.
And just how does it work? What's the deal for the private investor? What do they get?
Well, this was just like a charity.
As a donation?
Say. Yes, because sometimes there are people who want to invest somewhere. You can call it not investment, but also charity, but it is an investment because they expect some amount anytime, maybe 30 years later.
But it's interesting because there is a model which we now see increasingly in places like Italy, where private companies will do restoration work for a percentage of the tickets to go and see that. So it is a sort of...
It is also another model. And another case is when we gave a little bit more independence to the historical sites who are selling tickets, and from this income they renovated and they put new technologies, like we have a temple, a pagan temple of 1st century, where this site only by its income made illuminated all the area, and with a new sound system. After this work's done, as a result, we have the Milena Mercury Prize. So okay. This is another case. So I guess also the very important point is for promotion is planning. What are you going to restore? Are these on the routes of the are these on the touristical roads planned by the government? Because if the tourism ministry or the Ministry of Economy, in different cases, works separate with the Ministry of Culture from the Ministry of Culture, and they are doing their work without knowing their plans, maybe the Ministry of Culture can restore a monument that is not in the itinerary of the touristic road.
Okay. Understood. Thank you for that. I will be with the gentleman from Senegal in just a moment. We're going to be looking at our third topic, which is what leaders of tourism need from culture and vice versa. But just before we get to that, I want to open the question up to the floor. And it was something raised by Morocco about the degradation, commercial degradation around soft cultural areas, the intangibles. I'm curious, is there anybody here, obviously this is not an issue unique to Morocco, is there anyone here who could tell me how their country deals with that sort of issue, about keeping that environment pristine, teaching people to respect those cultures? Anyone?
I think here there is a conflict of interest. We need to agree that there is a conflict of interest between tourism and the protection of heritage. And to make it succeed, we need to maintain balance between exploration, reuse of the cultural site, and the sustainability and the protection of the heritage. And to do so, we need to, the people of tourism need to understand deeply the need of the heritage. And also, the heritage guy need deeply the need of tourism, because without tourism, archaeological site, cultural heritage site cannot be safe. And also, in the middle of this, the local citizens need to help. And to make them do so, we need to educate them. And this is the responsibility of the government, the local communities, and UNESCO also can play a role.
Educate rather than legislate.
Yes, and legislation, laws cannot protect alone. we need to educate people, to help people to be part of this initiative. And the day we have the citizen, the first protector of the heritage, this is the day that we can say we protect our human heritage.
Profits are a powerful incentive, though. There's a comment over here, so.
Thank you very much. I think, well, everybody in this room knows the importance of compatibility. And in classroom, it is fairly easy to reach agreement again. But as you say, in real world, it's very difficult. So what is important is how to realize it. I think, well, in some cases, still overcoming the difficulties, people can reach agreement. In that case, voluntary effort can work. And in other cases, direct regulation or direct prohibition by the government can work. And in other cases, help, assistance by the institution is important. But in many cases, I think the cases are kind of mixture of those. So let me introduce one example which Japan experiences. This is a case about Mount Fuji and World Heritage. Mount Fuji is not a natural heritage, it's a cultural heritage. Because, well, of course it is the highest mountain in Japan, but also it is hard to Japanese government, Japanese people, and object of worship. So people really wanted it to be inscribed as World Heritage. But at the same time, at that time, you can see a lot of buses, a lot of tourists, a lot of buildings, a lot of shops, anything you can find, because it is so popular and familiar. But in that way, probably, Mount Fuji cannot be inscribed as World Heritage. So, the rigorous discussion has begun. All the participants, both cultural side and tourism side, gather and make discussions again and again and again. So,
I'm just curious, just very quickly then, so the heritage side and the tourism side, the profit side versus the protection, if you like, how does that work? Do they reach agreement? Does one side have more power generally than the other? Do profits speak louder than protection?
By the power of a local government, because they have some authority, some neutrality, finally, in that case, the agreement is reached. Just before the registration, 1.5 years ago, before the registration. And that is, I think, well, the local government's role is very important.
So it's a dialogue thing. Okay. Excuse me, madam, you had a comment?
Sí, muchas gracias. ¿Se escucha? ¿Sí? Bueno, definitivamente vemos que hay una complementariedad y una relación directa entre el turismo y la cultura, pero es una relación que tiene que ser un gana-gana, en donde todos realmente tengamos un beneficio. Como industria turística hemos visto que nuestra materia prima, así como otras industrias tienen su materia prima, la nuestra es nuestro patrimonio natural y cultural, son ambos, y por lo tanto somos nosotros como industria turística los principales llamados en protegerlo, porque de lo contrario nosotros mismos estaríamos terminando nuestra industria. Pero por otro lado, también del lado de la cultura, se tienen que dar cuenta que el patrimonio necesita ser sostenible, y la única forma de hacerlo sostenible es generando pues, los recursos que permitan seguir con la investigación, pero sobre todo involucrando a las comunidades locales en los beneficios de la actividad turística. Para nosotros esa ha sido la clave. Estamos impulsando muchos proyectos de turismo rural, de turismo comunitario, involucrando a las comunidades en las selvas del Petén para visitar sitios arqueológicos con un producto que se llama Maya Trek, que son antiguas rutas mayas, Y la gestión comunitaria creo que es definitivamente uno de los factores clave, aunado pues a otros esfuerzos que como país se pueda hacer. Pero cuando le apostamos al turismo cultural, que es un turismo no masivo, pues también estamos buscando un turista responsable, un turista que es más consciente de, pues, del impacto que tiene que generar también de una forma positiva y no contribuir al deterioro del patrimonio. Así que creo que es una combinación de muchos factores, pero la comunidad juega un rol muy importante.
A very quick comment, sir, very quick, because I do want to get to the...
Merci. Tout le monde dit que la culture et le tourisme sont indissociables. S'ils sont indissociables, pourquoi ne pas les mettre ensemble? Je voudrais que les pays où on a ministère tourisme et culture nous disent comment ça marche chez eux. Parce que la plupart des pays ici, le ministère du tourisme est à côté, le ministère de la culture est à côté. Mais il y a quand même des pays où on a ministère du tourisme ou le ministère de la culture et du tourisme. Comment ça marche là-bas? Et quels sont les avantages de mettre le ministère du tourisme? Quels sont les avantages de mettre culture et tourisme ensemble? Je vous remercie.
There's one, it's a very good point. Does someone have a direct response to that? So, if you could make it...
It's a very good point. That's why in India, Minister of Tourism is normally Minister of Culture also. So whatever issues that the cultural community flags is addressed by him as a tourism minister and then also as a culture minister. Now just I would like to share with you an example of preservation of a time-tested style of architecture. In the desert of Rajasthan, we have a city of Jaisalmer, which is 800 years old fort and its style of architecture. Now there has to be happy blending of touristic prescription along with cultural requirement. So the local government decided all new buildings coming up would have a local style of architecture, so that it does blend with the overall ecosystem, architectural ecosystem of the city. And 4,000 buildings have been built in last 34 years. Not a single building is without the local style of architecture. So this is a happy blending of the requirements of the government or the governance issue and the participation of the community. It is a happy blending of the two, and it is doable.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to move on to the to our third topic, which is what leaders of tourism need from culture and what leaders of culture need from tourism. And my good friend from Senegal has been very patiently waiting. I do apologise for it's taken a long time to get to. But so perhaps the question here I have is, what are some of the challenges that have to be overcome when it comes to protecting culture from tourism? So it's continuing really the conversation. But
je vous remercie, Monsieur le modérateur. Je voudrais profiter de l'occasion qui m'est donnée pour remercier le gouvernement et le peuple de Cambodge pour leur accueil combien chaleureux et bien sûr associer à ces remerciements l'Organisation mondiale du tourisme et l'Unesco. Alors, pour saluer cette conférence qui vient à son heure, certes, mais pour nous, quand même, des réflexions et même une mise en pratique avait été initiée il y a longtemps, dans la mesure où le Sénégal avait, il y a une dizaine d'années à peu près, dans le cadre de la stratégie de croissance accélérée, qui était le programme de développement économique du pays, mis ensemble le tourisme et la culture. Par la suite, il y a 4 ans, les deux secteurs étaient associés à un seul ministère, en l'occurrence le ministère du tourisme et de la culture. Malheureusement, la greffe n'a pas tenu, il faut le dire comme ça, puisque par la suite, les secteurs ont été dissociés. Mais nous sommes d'avis quand même, comme le disait mon voisin de Seychelles, quand même qu'il s'agit d'un véritable mariage. C'est-à-dire l'idée de complémentarité, elle est très grande, elle est pertinente.
Excuse me, can I just quickly interrupt you? Why, if I can interrupt you, why did that not work? The tourism and the culture together in the same. Why did it not work?
Bon, il y a des éléments subjectifs, peut-être que je ne saurais développer dans le cadre, dans ce cadre qui tiennent peut-être à la politique intérieure du pays, mais nous, objectivement, bon, pour l'essentiel, il y en a peut-être qui seraient liés un peu à la personne de l'autorité qui incarnait le secteur à l'époque. C'est pour dire que c'est des éléments purement subjectifs qui interpellent la politique interne du pays, que je ne peux pas développer ici. Mais nous sommes d'avis aujourd'hui, moi j'ai été à l'époque secrétaire général du même ministère, je le suis aujourd'hui pour la culture, mais nous sommes d'avis que c'est des secteurs fortement complémentaires. À preuve, le Sénégal est un pays très touristique, l'a été pendant très longtemps. Et pendant tout ce temps-là, c'était un tourisme essentiellement balnéaire. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes soumis quand même à la rigueur des climats, avec une érosion maritime de plus en plus importante qui fait que le balnéaire ne fait plus le tourisme essentiellement. Nous sommes en train de nous tourner vers la culture qui dispose quand même de sites extrêmement importants. Nous avons 7 sites qui sont classés, dont 2 sites naturels et 5 sites culturels. Et bien sûr, nous avons 2 sites qui sont classés sur la liste du patrimoine immatériel. C'est pour dire aujourd'hui que l'alternative pour le tourisme sénégalais, c'est véritablement les biens culturels. Mais ces biens culturels, il faut bien sûr les pérenniser, quelqu'un l'a dit, il faut donc les protéger. Des initiatives sont prises dans ce sens, mais elles doivent être d'abord locales. Je pense quand même qu'il est important que le pays puisse protéger ses sites, son patrimoine, en les faisant connaître d'abord au niveau interne, au niveau local. Et bien sûr, l'Unesco intervient avec nous dans le cadre d'un partenariat, mais le représentant de la directrice générale l'a dit tout à l'heure, ils sont quand même soumis à certaines limites au regard des moyens financiers. Nous essayons, nous, dans le cadre de la coopération bilatérale avec le Qatar, certains pays qui veulent bien nous aider à quand même protéger ce patrimoine-là. Nous avons entrepris il y a 2 ou 3 ans au niveau du ministère de la Culture une tournée dite de la diversité culturelle qui avait essentiellement pour objectif à faire prendre conscience davantage aux populations locales l'extrême richesse de notre patrimoine culturel et sa diversité pour les permettre quand même de pouvoir les valoriser et les protéger. De la même manière, aujourd'hui, avec le ministère du Tourisme, nous avons finalisé un agenda culturel qui devrait quand même mieux faire profiter au tourisme du secteur culturel.
Yeah, thank you. Just very quickly, you do raise a good point about getting local tourism, educating local people about their own country. That's important to Senegal. That is a policy of the government.
Absolument, parce que nous nous rendons compte quand même que le patrimoine culturel est insuffisamment connu de nos pays, de nos populations. Ce qui entraîne par conséquence que les gens ne peuvent pas quand même en prendre conscience et donc les protéger d'abord à leur niveau. Donc ça, et par ailleurs, le tourisme national n'est pas aussi développé. Or, c'est important le tourisme international, mais je pense que le Cambodge l'a dit tout à l'heure, ce matin, le ministre du tourisme cambodgien a cité quand même l'importance, et avec des chiffres précis, du tourisme national.
Thank you very much. Yes, a quick comment.
Thank you very much. I think we're looking often what are the benefits of putting the two together, this marriage that we call, this roadmap that we find in history, and how to promote it to the world. In Seychelles, we have the two. I mean, I've got 2 seniors in the ministry, one that does culture as a PS and one that does tourism as a PS. So they talk together to see how to ensure that what we have protected is then publicized and given visibility. But the protection, which falls under the same ministry, finds the Heritage Board, the Heritage Section, the museums, but also they have the National Arts Council, so the tangible and intangible things are all covered. But above all, to ensure of success, we take it down to the grassroots level. We need to empower people to be involved. And I think this is the success of the world of protection of what we've had as that, the boards of history that we have today. And this protection, when you take it to the level of districts, you empower people, and we've done it through cultural awards, district cultural awards, for them to showcase what we have historically, what we have managed to save, and how we are showcasing them to the tourists of today. See, Seychelles depends entirely on tourism. It is the pillar of the economy. So we have to find all the assets of the country. If the two principal secretaries were not talking from the same ministry, you always have one trying to lead over the other one. Today they sit side by side, and today they empower the government of Seychelles to succeed in its approach of preservation and conservation, and in developing the pillar of the economy, which remains tourism.
Thank you. A comment from Namibia? Madam, you have a comment, a remark?
Thank you very much. Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm Juliet from Namibia, the Deputy Minister of Culture. So what I wanted to say is actually on the issue of the divisions about ministries, we have two ministries on culture and the one that deals with tourism. But very important to mention is the fact that we are complementing one another. A very good example that Namibia can bring on the table is actually, Namibia is a vast country with a very small population. Despite that, we have found a modality that is better working for us by creating conservancy, community conservancies. They are responsible for the tangible, intangible heritages of our country, because through that, they are protecting, they are preserving, and they are also sustaining it. So in terms of sustainability, the communities are generating funds from these activities that are going around the tangible heritage sites. Like for instance, in our country, we have 2 World Heritage that are recognized by UNESCO. So, and on that basis, they are generating funds that are degenerating back in the community. So we really just work mostly with policies and guidelines that are how to protect, how to advance and develop the tourism department and also the cultural activities. But the community are mostly involved in the protection, the preservation, and the sustainability of the heritages.
I have one quick question for you. You talked about the money raised through tourism going back into those UNESCO sites. What percentage of the takings, if you like, are generated back into protecting those monuments, those icons, that culture? Is most of it?
Yeah, it's actually depending from the development of each of the conservancies. Some of them are having a variety of activities. Like for instance, they are looking after animals, the wild. It's actually been part and parcel of that. Some of them are purely just looking after the cultural, the tangible in heritage. And others are adding also the intangible heritages, like for instance, the cultural groups of the community. So a bigger percentage is remaining in the community, while the others, like for instance, when you are entering at the gate of a national park in that area, it's going to the government. But most of the profit is remaining in the community to develop that specific community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to call on the Deputy Head of the Federal Agency of Tourism for Russia, if I could, and I'd like to hear from them, are they, yes sir, about, again, the challenges, the big challenges you face when you are protecting culture through tourism. What are the biggest problems you have with that?
Ну, большое спасибо организаторам за то, что есть возможность выступать на родном языке. Знаете, Российская Федерация по территории тоже очень большая страна, и, конечно, огромное количество, слышно, да? Огромное количество существует памятников культурного, природного наследия в нашей стране. Говоря о туризме, а я представляю туризм, у нас Министерство культуры, туристическая отрасль относится тоже к Министерству культуры, есть специальное федеральное агентство по туризму, которое входит в состав Министерства культуры. То, говоря о туризме в нашей стране, наша отрасль была и в Министерстве спорта, и была перед этим в Министерстве экономического развития. Тут часто пресса задает мне вопрос, а вы бы не против были бы, если бы ваше Министерство туризма было бы в Министерстве финансов? Конечно, не против, это было бы, наверное, еще лучше, была бы еще большая поддержка государства со стороны финансов. С другой стороны, безусловно, помогает решать вот это объединение или эта синергия культуры и туризма, помогает решать многие задачи и с сохранением, безусловно, культурного наследия. Ну, маленький пример, да, вот сегодня сказали, что 1 миллиард посещений, каждый, если турист просто даже на ботиночке отнесет там несколько грамм песка, то, представляете, целый состав получится. Конечно, безусловно, туризм влияет самым серьезным образом на сохранение культурного наследия. С другой стороны, я вот как представитель туристской отрасли хотел бы сказать и попросить при этом ЮНЕСКО о том, что когда подается список или пополняется список объектов культурного наследия, очень бы хотелось бы, чтобы выставлялись в стране требования определенные. Ну, в частности, если это мировое наследие, то, наверное, хотелось бы, чтобы вопросы доступности памятникам культурного наследия были решены в этой стране. А что я подразумеваю под словом «доступность»? Это и информационная доступность, потому что, безусловно, должен весь мир знать об этом памятнике, как он соблюдается, какие правила соблюдаются. Второе – это, безусловно, какая-то визовая доступность. То есть должны быть решены вопросы, связанные с свободным перемещением туристов к этим памятникам мирового наследия. И третье, безусловно, это вопросы транспортной доступности, потому что если нет возможности добраться туда, нет дорог, нет авиационного сообщения, безусловно, очень трудно посетить и увидеть воочию это культурное наследие. Поэтому вопрос в том, что должно быть Министерство культуры и туризма существовать совместно или раздельно, наверное, это не принципиальный вопрос. Принципиальный вопрос в том, чтобы определить пути совместного взаимодействия. Вот в ЮНВТО прекрасно знают, материалы имеются о том, что 53 отрасли взаимодействуют при разработке туристских маршрутов, при продаже туристского продукта. 53 отрасли. Значит, давайте там Министерство туризма объединим со всеми остальными министерствами. Наверное, это не совсем правильно. Правильно все-таки выработать единые подходы, инструменты взаимодействия, и тогда эти задачи будут решены. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Streamlining. I'll let you speak to UNESCO offline about the questions you raised. But at the moment, I'm going to stretch my legs and move across this side of the room. I'd like to call on the Deputy Minister of Tourism for Guatemala just to talk about partnership and the principles of making partnership between tourism and culture work. Is the Guatemalan representative here? My timing, as always, is perfect. So it's just the guiding principles, if you like, of making the partnership work. What has to happen to have an equal and equitable relationship between tourism and culture?
Sí, muchas gracias. Como lo mencioné anteriormente, pues son dos actividades complementarias y que definitivamente tenemos que trabajar de una forma conjunta ambos sectores. Como decía, para la industria turística es vital el patrimonio natural y cultural, y para el sector cultural pues también buscar esa puesta en valor del patrimonio. Pero sobre todo creo que uno de los retos que tenemos es cómo buscar ese equilibrio para mantener esas culturas vivas y por supuesto ese equilibrio entre desarrollo, pero también a la vez la sostenibilidad y también ver pues también la modernidad versus la tradición, o sea, cómo mantener realmente ese balance y ese equilibrio, porque en eso radica pues mucha parte de nuestra riqueza. Así que creo que definitivamente tenemos que trabajar de forma conjunta porque ambos vamos a beneficiarnos y especialmente va a ser un beneficio para nuestro pueblo que va a tener pues fuentes de empleo y generación de desarrollo local a través del turismo y la cultura.
It is a common theme here about working in partnership, working together to produce these results. So thank you very much for that. Well, moving on to our next subsection, which is looking at where tourism and culture are already working together as one. And I'd like to call on the representatives from the Ministry of Tourism in the Philippines to give us some examples of where concrete projects and initiatives are coming together.
Your Excellencies, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the question and the opportunity to respond. I speak from the specific context of the Philippines where we have a Department of Tourism which is separate from a non-existent Department of Culture. We do have a National Commission for Culture and the Arts, but it does not exist on the same level as a ministry. That being said, perhaps and also to properly contextualize my response to the question, there has been quite a storied paradigm framing for how culture has been appreciated in the Philippines. For the longest time, culture was part of a ministry for education, where the legal charter for that ministry did not necessarily define its tasks as regards the promotion, enhancement, or protection even of culture. It was, with due respect to my predecessors in the bureaucracy, tokenism for culture's sake. This was back in the time of the dictatorship in the Philippines. But that being said, in the past years, we are quite pleased that the Department of Tourism has had a fairly good relationship with the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. The Department of Tourism exists and sits on the board of our National Commission. And in that regard, there have been convergence programs. One specific example I can cite for you, in the case of the Philippines, is our Department of Tourism has the direct management of a number of heritage sites, and among them Intramuros, which is the site of the Spanish settlement 400 years ago. And because of the Department of Tourism, we have entered into a convergence program, which is an ad hoc arrangement with our neighboring districts, with the National Museum of the Philippines, for example, and the National Parks Development Committee, which is also in charge of our Rizal Park, where you have the National Monument. But unfortunately right now, these arrangements are ad hoc. They come in the form of agreements that are executed between the Department of Tourism and these other cultural agencies. In many ways, because really there is that disjunct. The Ministry of Tourism does not exist on the same level as the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. And it appears to me that what is emerging from this conversation is that it would truly be ideal for there to be a marriage between culture and tourism, for them to exist on the same level as one ministry or as one department.
A very interesting point. Would anyone like to, yes, Dr. Riyad.
I would like to add something here. I think the discussion about whether tourism and culture should be in one cabinet, one ministry, one portfolio or not, or whether they should be separate, is really not the point here. Regardless of where you put tourism, where you put culture, tourism is everybody's business and culture is everybody's business. It's how people work together. In my previous life, I was in charge of a portfolio called Tourism and Antiquities, not even culture. Culture was a separate cabinet altogether. But the fact is that unless this is endorsed and supported by the highest level of government hierarchy, it doesn't work. When you have a Prime Minister of Cambodia coming here and say tourism is important to me, that's unique. When he says culture is important to me, that's unique. Because as we heard from our good friend from the Philippines there, many times the portfolio of tourism or the portfolio of culture are given as political appeasement, which is what the problem is. The problem is how important is tourism and how important is culture up on our national agenda. Tourism is not a sectoral policy agenda, it's a national policy agenda. Culture is a political agenda as well. It's about our identity, about our future, about our pride, about how we see ourselves. So I think that the discussion should not be about where to put tourism, it's about how we work together, how we secure the best and the highest possible support from the political hierarchy. If the top of government believes in tourism and in culture, then it will move. If it doesn't, it won't. The Minister of Finance alone can block anything he wants. The Minister of Aviation can stop people from coming to a country. There is no sense in working to promote anything if people don't work together and if there is no directive from high on top.
I noticed Mr. Perez nodding next to you. I'm just curious to get your view on that. I mean, just how seriously, and what is the trend? Are governments, as government leadership, recognising the importance and acting accordingly, or not yet? As we heard from the Philippines, there are still problems.
I fully share what Dr. Rifai has said on this. I think there are not sectoral policies. There are intersectoral or national agendas and should be taken like this. The problem is that the two sides maybe conflict partially, but these conflicts have to be overcome in a broader perspective. I would like to say that tourism cannot be taken only in the short-term perspective. It has to be sustainable. That means to take the long-term perspective. As culture has always been a long-term issue. It's not just a short-term issue. And so both can converge in the same perspective, provided the government and the society, also civil society and the private sector, can achieve this vision. Because if not, there will be always problems of understanding between the several sectors of society which have to be involved in this perspective.